In September 2008, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac became household words. There are mortgage lenders who were seized by the federal government and bailing them out because of all the losses and the bankruptcies and the bad debt that were associated with them. But in order to understand Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae and how they came to be and why there was a problem, we need to go back. We need to go back in time. In fact, we're going to go to the mid-1970s and do a little research on the Community Reinvestment Act, because therein lies the issue. Now, the original intent, if we look at the information on Community Reinvestment Act, we find the government moves against redlining, November 13, 1977. So the problems of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac actually have their origins back in concerns about discrimination in the housing and mortgage industry. Vice President Mondale, announcing the new regulations, called them the strongest action ever taken to end discrimination in mortgage lending and credit practices. The Savings and Loans, for their part, take the position that redlining has had little to do with the fundamental problems of the inner cities. But in fact, from President Carter and Mr. Mondale, they felt this was an essential step in the administration's urban policy and will help revitalize our cities. The goal there was to get more mortgages in inner city. So that was the goal of Community Reinvestment Act, and ensuring that the credit needs of the local communities were being met. Now, people debated exactly what a community was and what the credit needs were. It was not exactly the simplest thing to define, but that's some of the questions that had to do with back in 1977, 1978. In New York, there was some concern about the total cave-in by Democrats trying to halt the practice of redlining, because they were concerned about the Republican plan, which would provide would declare redlining illegal without providing specific penalties or enforcement powers to stop it. So that was one of the concerns here in New York State. Moving on to the Clinton years, we find that redlining was still an issue, and the U.S. seeks more loans for minorities. Some economists don't see a problem, but the federal government did. So they were working on a broad new federal requirements for more lending to minorities, and the cost will probably be spread among all borrowers, banking specialists say. So the congressional Democrats and Clinton administration were interested in putting more money into the hands of minorities, but that really means more mortgages into the hands of minorities, who coincidentally happen to be suffering the most in the current situation. Now, what happened is in Boston, there was an effort led by a Ms. Monell, who looked at a large random sample of mortgage applications in the Boston area. The study considered employment, age, family stability, neighborhood stability, personal debts, credit histories, and size of requested loans compared with house values, all of which might have explained why non-whites were rejected in disproportionate numbers. So in fact, looking at it by the mid-1990s, we're sort of debating whether or not the issue that they're trying to solve was actually rooted in this particular issue. So, but continuing on, 1996, Rudy Giuliani was the mayor of New York City, and in a broad plan intended to raise the historically low level of home ownership in New York City, Fannie Mae, the nation's largest provider of mortgage loans, is making $8 billion available and changing its rules so that more New Yorkers of all incomes qualify for loans. So the reality is, while the intentions were very good in the 1970s, the intentions to eliminate discrimination based on racial preferences, as an example, we find that the truth is, in economics, we discriminate based on economics, your ability to repay. So what started out as a good idea perhaps mushroomed to the point where Fannie Mae was changing the rules so that more New Yorkers of all incomes could qualify for loans. And when you change the rules and you defy the laws of economics, I'm afraid at some point it's going to come back to bite you. And that's exactly what happened with the credit problems of 2007 and 2008. And now you know the rest of the story.